Join us in the Bear Den, a real-life, real-love podcast celebrating the joys and challenges of parenting, family dynamics, and unconditional love.
Friends, welcome to another episode of the Bear Den podcast. Today, I have a great friend of mine, a gentleman that I have spent several hours talking about parenting with here in the US and also in Spain when we were over there running with the ball. So I'm very excited to introduce Mr. Jarom Iacono. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Yeah.
God, that hair. Okay, guys, for people on the podcast, look at this guy. Like, he's like the Salt Lake George Clooney.
Yeah, I love it.
That's what we were calling you in Spain. We were calling you the Spanish George Clooney, and you were like, yeah, sí, señor. Sí, señor.
The whole time in Spain, it was the Spaniard.
The Spaniard. You fit the bill. Yeah, you've kind of got that little olive skin. You've got the flowing locks. You know, you kind of got that Luis Figo kind of Spanish look. This is the longest
I have grown my hair out.
It suits you.
Yeah.
Not many dudes can pull off the midlife crisis, but you do it really well.
You know, I went through quite the metamorphosis.
Really?
Yeah.
You had some hairstyles in your past?
Yeah, well, I mean, they were all the same. They were all pretty short cut.
Yeah.
And for how I felt about them, pretty immature.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And there was a space there where there was a lot of emotional development. And so I started going through different hairstyles.
Really?
Letting it grow, and then I'd be like, this is too much. I'm gonna chop the whole, and I'd go from this to a buzz cut.
You like the American David Beckham?
Yeah.
Do you know, obviously you know who David Beckham is, right? Yeah. He's got a, obviously English Man United fan since I was a kid. David Beckham was a hero to me as a kid, right? But he just released this documentary on Netflix. Super good if you haven't watched it. I would watch it if I was you. But here's the same thing with his hairstyles. You know, he kind of went from like the normal hairstyle, then he had the blonde locks, and then he had it shaved it all off, then he had a mohawk, and there was times in his life where his hairstyle changed with his energy, his temperament, what he was doing in life. So that's it, you know, the Salt Lake David Beckham.
Yeah,
that's it.
I get people that'll come up to me and they're like, I don't like it. And I'm like, and I'm not going to talk to you anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry, you don't like my hair?
like family members that are just like, you know, you've been changing a lot, you know, or friends that are like, you've really changed. And I'm like, so tell me, is it a good thing or a bad thing to you? Because that's like, for me, it's a big deal that friends change.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and
gotta grow.
I want to see him change. I want to see him grow. You know, I don't want to see him grow and change according to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like what works for you, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, great. You know, this works for me. You accept it. I accept you, and I want you to do you, and I'll do me. And
honestly, if you're worried about somebody else's hair, what the hell? I got bigger shit to worry about.
Yeah,
I don't care whether you have a buzz cut, whether you grow it down to your ass, whether you braid it or put it in pigtails, Jeremy. I don't give a shit. You do you. Yeah. I'm doing me. Yeah. I'm just jealous I don't have any.
Yeah.
I look at you, I'm like, oh, what it would be like to run my fingers through that.
Bro, I'm telling you, it's so strange. When I look at myself in the mirror now, I feel like I'm that adult version of me finally.
Oh, really?
It's really strange to say, I know, but there were times where my identity was of my hair, you know.
Yeah,
like my grandpa was a barber, my mom was a beautician, and I just never liked my hair. I never liked what was going on there. Yeah, thick head of hair, but I never grew it out. Growing up, never grew it out.
Wow. Got
into my 30s, a little bit here and there. And then I was just like, you know what? I'm going to let this thing go.
Yeah.
And there was some transformation, like being able to see yourself in a different way. And you let go of a lot of things.
I've done that with my beard a little bit. Obviously I don't have hair. So I same as you back in the day. When I was 18, I started losing my hair when I was 24, 25. Yeah. Started to get the little friar tuck going, and then it got really thin on top. And, I was in the military and I'm tall, so I'd always kind of, do things with gel it and spike it so you couldn't really see it. And then we had hats on a lot of the time, so you couldn't see it. But when it started to get really thin, I was like, I'm running out of things to work with here. Like it's getting really thin. Then I was overseas in Iraq at the time, and I was just like, I'll just shave it all off. And thankfully I did. And my girlfriend at the time was like, yeah, actually you have a really good shaped head. It works for you.
You do.
But then now I kind of play, but I was really attached to my hair back in the day. It was kind of like my identity, everything else could look shitty on me, but the hair had to be in place. It was it was crazy. But now it's kind of the beard. I've played with iterations of my beard. Like I've I've only been clean shaven once, which was my wedding day to Andrea since 2011. I've had stubble since 2011.
Have you ever dyed your beard?
No, this is all natural. Yeah.
It's been one thing.
I thought about it, but then I'm like, everybody knows me as Salt and Pepper. If I came to work, can you imagine me walking into like a We Are the Day and I've got like a jet black beard? People are like, bro, what are you doing?
What's going
on? Get into integrity. What crisis are you having?
You're having a crisis. I can definitely see.
Yeah. But I've grown it short. I've grown it long. I grew it out for about a 6-month period, and it was down to here at one point. And I used to ride my motorcycle. And it used to flap up into my face, and I was like chewing it. And my mother hated it. Andrea hated it. She's like, you just cut it off. I'm like, nah, I'm still playing with it. And then one day I just clipped it all off. I was like, done that, so...
I did the beard thing for a while. It's not, my beard doesn't fill in.
I couldn't see you with the beard.
Yeah, I did it. I got it out to maybe an inch and a half right in there.
Yeah.
But
it's a fun thing to play with. It's a manly thing. Yeah. It's, just get to scratch it. And the wives like it too. They
I
like
know
to
my
play
jaw
with.
clenches up when you say it. I'm like, I like that beard. Because I'd go like this sometimes, just rub it.
And then you you see other dudes with the beard and you kind of give them that little chin up nod. It's like game recognizes game.
We get each other.
Yes, exactly. So we just completely started off on a random tangent about hair, which I absolutely love. That's the beauty of these things. What about your kids? So keep it on the hair route. How many boys have you got?
So I've got one boy.
One boy.
He's 16. He'll be 17 in a month.
Ooh, how's that?
Well, it was great until Tuesday.
It's like I could put a date and time on it.
Yeah, he snuck out of the house.
Wow.
Yeah.
First time?
Snuck out of the house, 1 a.m. And his girlfriend's mom contacts us the next day. And she's like, all right, look, they were chatting. I was with them all night. Just want to let you know that this is what happened, and they snuck out. So I'm like, bud, you snuck out of the house. That's awesome. We have an alarm, and you turn the alarm off and everything. Like, you must have worked this thing out, thought it out, right?
God.
No, Dad, I just turned the alarm and I went out the garage door. And I was like, oh, at least you're honest.
It's like, shit, I really need to look how deep I sleep. Like, God almighty.
Yeah. So, he's a great kid.
So how do you, because I'm sure people listening, they may have, what you said, he's 16?
16.
16 nearly 17. So folks out there, 16, 17-year-olds, sons or daughters, doesn't really make a difference. What's your next level of discipline or next level of accountability with something like that? Because he's done it once. You can get away with it.
Yeah.
You caught him, and he's kind of like, Dad, it was easy. Like, you didn't, this wasn't the Crystal Maze, you know what I mean? It was easy. I turned off the garage, went out.
Yeah, he was like, she was really stressed about some things, and it was keeping me up. She was calling me. I didn't want to keep dealing with it, so I just went over to her house.
Which I actually love.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going to deal with this bullshit over text. I'm just coming to you.
You know what?
Figure this out.
He does that a lot. And I think that it's kind of messed with her head.
Oh, really?
To a point where, it's backfiring on him. So yeah, bud, you're kind of having to walk this line because it's something you created. And he's more focused on sports.
Okay.
At least he says
he's a big
that
baseball
right
player, right?
Yeah. More focused on baseball. He got all of his buddies together, like 5 or 6 of them, and he convinced them all that this summer they should dump all their girlfriends. And that got back to the girls that Ethan was the one that, suggested all of this. So yeah, needless to say, our house gets toilet papered. We get, all kinds of stuff happen right at the Iaconos, and he still sticks to it. He still is, I don't want any interference. Now baseball's been over for about a month, and girls are coming back into his life. He just got asked to Sadie Hawkins dance, and so, but yeah, I don't go in. I'm not the hard disciplinary.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I want to understand what it is that engaged that thought.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my dad was so impulsive.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like, you would wince when you're standing next to him. Like, if he was to your right side, you'd be like this because you didn't know if you were going to get, a karate chop to the throat.
Wow.
You know, or like a backhand in the chest. And when he backhanded you in the chest, it was like knock the wind out of you backhand.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And if something was going on and he found out it was me, you know, he was quick to let me know it.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 4 other siblings.
Okay.
One passed away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Boys, girls, brothers, sisters?
I have 3 older sisters and 1 younger brother.
Wow.
Yeah. I have 3 older A personality sisters.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah, they really, really are. And my mom is a lot more passive.
Okay.
Very, very passive. My dad is a very A personality type of person. I got a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And my brother is more of the passive type.
Yeah.
But yeah, growing up with 3 older sisters, they were tough sisters. They were not the girly sisters.
Mm-hmm.
My sister that was just older than me, she used to beat the crap out of me.
Wow.
Yeah. And then when I started to get stronger, she'd come at me with weapons. Like she was rough. She was rough, but I loved her just the same. All my siblings, they're great.
Yeah.
They're great. But I didn't come out of the family with this desire to really discipline hard. And for a while, I think that I really like enforced this tough love, right? Like watching my sister grow up made me, really cling to this idea of tough love. Because my sister April. My other 2 sisters are twins.
Okay.
And but my sister April, who's about 3-4 years older than me, she was into anything and everything, right? Any kind of drug, any kind of sexual activity. High school, she got pregnant, and then was just the steepest roller coaster.
How did your parents react to that? With your mom being passive and your dad being A-type, like how did they?
That was one of my reasonings. That was my logic. And you got to have tough love because my parents were, what I felt, they enabled a lot.
Oh, really?
April, I really wish you wouldn't do this. And, oh, that really hurts. And, and it's just like, great. She's getting what she needs out of you with your reaction to that.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to develop my own sense of setting firm boundaries.
Yeah.
And my mom, she wouldn't set a lot of boundaries. But, she had other things that she was really gifted at.
Yeah.
And I just noticed with my sister, her and I were really close. Used to hang out a lot in high school. Needless to say, I used to enjoy a lot of the activities that she did. But I wasn't sexually active in high school. I wasn't crazy with all of her friends. She was big into gangs and all kinds of stuff, drive-by shootings.
Oh,
She'd get in fights constantly. She was a beautiful woman.
What was the reasoning for that? Was it a lack of attention at home, or was there something missing in the Iacono family at home that she needed to go elsewhere to be rebellious, to get the reaction from your mom and dad for that little bit of love, that little bit of attention? Was there, or was it just her friends were the wrong friends and she wanted to just be in with the cool kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a combination.
Because I know for me as a kid, I did stuff knowing that it would get a reaction out of my parents, good, bad, or indifferent, but it would get me a reaction.
That's the thing, right?
That's the thing.
We all need love, and love may come in this form of
Yeah.
a reaction, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
This hurts your mom and dad. And it's like, good, now I know you love me.
Now I know you love me because you're upset about it.
Yeah.
Now I know that you love me.
Yeah, and I think that, for me, it took a while to get rid of the tough love and realize where tough love was actually hurting me in my life. It was hurting my children, it was hurting Jesse. More importantly than anyone else, it was hurting my internal landscape, right? Like the conversations I would have with myself. Well, that's just because you're doing this.
Yeah.
And that's because you're you got to get your shit together, right? Like I had this, Jesse and I went to New York on a whim, and I didn't plan any of the days. I'm just like, we're going to manifest some cool stuff. How about that? And sure enough, we did the coolest stuff in all of New York. Even went and we saw Hall & Oates at Madison Square.
Nice.
As we're driving over the Brooklyn Bridge, I look up a concert and I'm like, let's go. There's scalpers there. We'll go in and we'll work some deals on some tickets.
Those are the best trips, right? You don't plan anything, just let shit fall in your lap.
So good.
Yeah.
And that morning we're like, let's go to the Seinfeld Cafe. Let's just go see it. I want to see this Seinfeld Cafe. It was a dive, hole in the wall, piece of junk. Doesn't look like the movies or anything like that. But on our way there, we're on the subway and I'm standing on the subway next to the biggest woman, right? The biggest black woman and this little black man. And he is just yapping. Like he's got he's got the tiniest little voice, and she's just got the most stoic look on her face. She's frowning and she's just focused. She's not breaking her.
Not even looking at it.
No, it's so funny. And I'm watching the two of them, right? You could go to New York and you could do people watching for the rest of your life.
Love people watching.
And I'm just watching the two of them, and every time they would do something that'd make me laugh, I'd grab Jesse's hand and she'd look over. She's like, what? You gotta watch these two. Like, she doesn't break her stare. She's staring straight ahead on the subway. She's not even looking out the window. She's just straight ahead. And he is just talking. She did me wrong. She was doing me wrong. We get out of the subway at our stop. They get out of the subway. We go up to the street. We're walking down the street. They're in front of us, and he is still going. And we go through stoplight after stoplight. We finally come to this one stoplight, and we stop. And he's just looking down at the pavement, and he's talking, and she goes, "Why don't you quit being a little bitch? Get your shit together." And he just shut up. He just shut up. And for the next two lights, he said nothing, and they just walked. And I was like, oh my hell.
Yeah.
That is the voice in my head.
Oh, really?
That is the voice in my head.
So, and your internal voice is a black woman?
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. And quit being a little bitch. And I noticed though that it was voices like that. It was dialogue like that was defining to me what love was. Mm-hmm. And that's not love.
Yeah.
Like it's really easy when you have two girls, two young daughters, to really say, okay, tough love's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine what my dad went through, mm-hmm. right? And to be able to say what my parents should or should not have done with my sister, or to say, yeah, it was that time or that instance there was a lot in my family. It was tumultuous. Well, there were good times, there were bad times, right?
And it's hindsight. And, you and I have talked about this in conversation, over dinners and in Spain and in the US and whatever. Like, there's no parenting book. We look back at the way your parents parented you and your siblings, the way my parents parented me and my siblings. There's no parenting book. They just did the best they could with the information they had at the time. And I think, there's people nowadays that have gripes with their parents for, my parents did this to me when I was a kid. Sure, they were doing the best they could. Now, don't get me wrong, I've had people on the podcast that were physically and verbally and emotionally abused. I'm not saying that's okay, right? But sure, your parents giving you some tough love, or your parents not giving you the tough love, or your parents giving you a clip around the ear roll and sending you to bed without your dinner. They were just doing the best they could. They didn't have a rule book. We don't have a rule book. We just take the examples of what our parents set and showed us and we take the best bits from it, and we adjust and tweak and do better, and we take the bits that we didn't like, and we'll never do that again. There's no rule book, and so when parents are like, oh yeah, my parents were harsh as hell on me, and I used to get a good whooping, and I could never play out late at night, and I could never have friends over. I'm like, they were just doing the best they could.
Yeah.
Just be better. Right. Just be better now.
Yeah. Imagine their parents.
Yes. Right? Oh, fuck yeah. My grandmother passed away last year, 96 years old. She was a stalwart. She was I'm telling you. I'm 6'2". She was a tiny little dot. And even in her 90s, she'd threaten to clip me around the ear roll.
Yeah.
She's like, you're not too big for one of these. Yeah. I'm like, okay now.
I just saw my grandma the other day. She's 98. And she didn't recognize me. I thought it was the hair. she looked at me and she goes, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Yes, it's
it's
Jarom."
Bad, Jarom, when she actually calls you one of your sister's names. She's like, "With that hair, you must be Deirdre." You're like,
"Your hair's long enough now."
I didn't realize we had three girls. I'm like, oh shit, 4 girls. I'm like, oh, man, it's me. So how do you parent your kids now? What's your temperament with your parenting?
As far as like tough love and love, right? Like there isn't such thing as tough love. Mm-hmm. Like love isn't tough.
Shouldn't be.
Like love isn't hard.
Yeah. Love
is soft, right? Love is transparent. Love is truth. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference maker for me.
Yeah.
Love is truth.
I love that.
And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to hurt you. This is truth.
Yeah.
And so I don't think people need tough love. I think people need a love that holds them accountable.
That's actually very smart. Yeah.
Yeah. And so with my children, I do my best. Mm-hmm. But just like my parents, I may fall flat. But the area that I work from is that I'm going to love them, right? And hold them accountable. And I'm going to be honest with them. And I'm going to have those hard conversations with them. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not going to enable them later on in life. When they are going through life and they are going to experience the tough parts of life. Like they're going through it right now as teenagers and they may feel like it's tough. And they'll mature and develop and the tough parts of life they'll be able to roll with those punches. The thing that I needed more of was not the tough love, not to teach me that the mistakes that I was going to continually make, I had to be tough on myself.
Gotcha.
Right? There's ways to be tough on yourself, right? But not through love. That's not love. Like that's holding somebody accountable to truth and integrity. That's love.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I think that for the kids, right now, that's.
How is that received by the kids?
The oldest 2 are, they're kind of squeamish when Jesse and I are loving on them and hugging them and kissing them, but they're at that phase.
Yeah.
Right. They're at that really strange phase. When we were down in.
So how old's your oldest 2? Your oldest, you got your son who's 16, 17.
14.
Gotcha.
And then an 11-year-old.
Who's a little sweetheart, by the way.
She is.
She's a heart stealer.
She is our manifesting generator. Like
really?
If you know what that is, like she is the person that will generate all kinds of energy.
Yeah.
And you just sometimes it's like, okay, I need a break.
Calm down.
I need a break. Like yeah. But you can't treat an 11-year-old like that. So you understand where she's coming from and then you understand how to handle her.
Yeah. And she's such a beautiful soul. Several weeks ago now, we went to see Mark McCormack in the play of Joseph here in Salt Lake, and Andrew and I had flown up to come see him for that weekend. And on the opening night, you came and did a little daddy-daughter date with your daughter, and she was dressed in this beautiful little green dress. And honestly, it was so beautiful to see the two of you together. Because that's kind of like, you know, I have two daughters, 13 and 11. I love doing little daddy-daughter days or daddy-daughter evenings, even if it's just going taking them shopping for the afternoon to go buy some new shoes or whatever, right? Or just even taking them for ice cream. Like, just spending time with the girls is super precious. And we try and do a good balance of Andrea gets one-on-one time with the girls. Maybe they go get their nails done or hair done, whatever, and I get one-on-one time with the girls doing things that are more my style. But I also do things at their style. You want to go shopping? I'll go shopping with you. I'll carry the bags. I don't care. I took the girls shopping individually once, right? They wanted new shoes. And they said, Dad, can we go get some Jordans? I said, you know, fine. I actually buy them online, but we'll go to the store. So we went and we ended up getting Converse. I think that's what she wanted, or Vans or whatever it was, right? So we did that. And Lily said, I said, well, what else do you want to do? And Lily goes, well, you know, there's a couple of clothes shops I want to go to, but I know you're not going to be interested in that, so we don't have to go. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Come on, let's go. Let's go grab a Starbucks. Let's go do some clothes shopping. She was like, seriously? I'm like, yes. So we walk in, and I'm taking her in the clothes shops, and you can tell she's a little tense. She's a little weirded out because Dad's with her instead of Mom, and, you know, Mom's normally picking up clothes saying, this will look good on you, honey, and I'm not all about that shit. I'm like, you go pick whatever you want. If it fits and it's respectable, we'll buy it. She's like, you sure? I'm like, yes, bugger off, go do it. So she's running around, she's grabbing it. She's like, what do you think about this? I'm like, I love it. And I'm hamming it up. I'm like, oh my God, that is super sexy. And she's like, Dad, that's embarrassing. I'm like, girlfriend. Yeah, she's like, Dad, will you stand outside the store? Right? But it was beautiful. And we bought a couple of items, and like the cashier was like, oh, this is great that you and your dad are doing this. She's like, yeah, it's kind of the first time I've ever done it. It's kind of fun. But it was beautiful. That's just the way we connected. But getting back to you and your daughter, that evening you show up, you know, we're kind of all dressed up a little bit. We're going to the theater. She has this beautiful little green dress on. We go out, you know, we have some dinner beforehand, and just seeing the two of you was just super beautiful. And there was this moment that I caught it, and I think there were a couple of other people at the table that caught it. And it honestly, it was like, that's beautiful. And so there was this moment when we were eating dinner, she was sat next to you, that you were kind of sharing a plate, and you'd had something to eat, and you got something on your lip. And she grabbed her napkin and wiped your lip. She wiped the whatever it was off your lip. And I was like, ooh, that's a moment. That's a moment. Right? Oh, as a daughter, like, I was like, that is beautiful. And then you shared the video because we'd bought box seats for the theater. You shared that video of her walking in, and her eyes. She was like, oh my God, we're in a box.
It didn't even dawn on me until we walked in the doors, and you're going through that one little kind of the sound area. And it just dawned on me when we're walking through there, holy crap, she's never seen a theater like this.
Yeah.
And so I ripped my phone out, and I put it on video, and I start videoing her.
It was beautiful.
And it just played out, and I was just like, oh, I'm so glad I caught this, because Jesse was out of town.
Yeah. Her emotion was just, and do me a favor. In fact, dude, do me a favor. Send me the video. I'm going to embed that little bit of the clip into this podcast so people can see that, because the emotion on her face, you know, you walked, because you got box seats. You're up on the second or third floor, right? You got the kind of box, and just her face. She's walked in. Her eyes were like saucers, and she's looking around and looking down at the stage, and they had this biggest smile on her face. That's the shit you can't buy.
You can't.
You just can't buy. Well, clearly you bought the tickets. But,
yeah, and you know what? You can't duplicate it either.
No. There's only one shot at that.
There's not a replica.
No, because any other theater she goes into now, she's like, oh, I've seen this before. If you sit down in the regular seat, she's like, oh, I've sat in a box once when I was 11. You know what I mean? You can't it was just such a beautiful moment, and I just treasure the fact that the two of you got to do that. It's like those moments in life. It's like, that's a cup filler on your worst day. You know, deal has fallen through. You've had an argument with your spouse. The kids are sneaking out at night, and you think, fuck, what am I doing as a parent? Why haven't I taught them better?
This is what she was like when she was 11.
This is what she was like when she was an asshole. Right? But it's just those little things, man. So that, for me as a girl dad, when I saw that, I was like, that is a beautiful moment. Yeah. And I'm glad it was just the two of you. That kind of got to do
and
that.
It's been working up to that. You know, there's been a lot of date nights, a lot of daddy-daughter date nights. We've got a fast food restaurant down the road, and we'll jump on these scooters. Ben Thompson. Oh, he got us
scooters.
He got us a bunch of scooters, and that's what we use for date nights. There's a big overpass on the highway by our house. Yeah, a walking overpass. that we'll go and ride our scooters up and just have ice cream, eat ice cream from the Arctic circles that we pull into.
Perfect.
And we go through the drive-through on the scooters.
Perfect.
People pulling in front of us and behind us. And
hey, if we can do it in 5 lanes of traffic in Spain, we can do it in Salt Lake.
No, I'm like, no, this is about us.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to take our time and we're going to pretend that we're a car going through the drive-through. We're on our scooters and she'd be looking around, Dad, or is this okay? I'm like, yeah, hey, just be in the moment.
Yeah.
It's just about this moment.
And, I think that's, we'll, as we continue talking here, people understand, but, you've got your son who's in baseball and he's very good at baseball, and that takes time and training and takes time from you and Jesse to go to baseball and take him to all these things. And that is a huge commitment. Sport is a huge commitment. And it can often, not that I'm in this place, but I'm assuming it can be a case of, well, we put so much focus on the baseball and the sport and getting into the games, getting into the training, getting to the camps, whatever he needs, blah, 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 blah. The other kids that aren't in sport just kind of follow toe. It's a case of, well, Saturday's baseball day because we've got to go do baseball. And the other kids are like, oh, okay, we're going to baseball, right, whatever. So you have to break down and find those moments that this isn't about baseball. This isn't about ballet or anything. This is just about us.
It just so happens that we're playing baseball.
Yeah.
And that is so key.
Yeah.
Baseball is not life. But there are a lot of lessons in baseball that will help you through life.
Absolutely.
And that's where I want to focus our attention. And that's how I've been with Ethan his entire life. And I coached him for half of his life. And then when I really backed off and said, okay, someone better than me go in, that's when he took off.
Yeah.
And I had a moment one day. You talk to a lot of dads, and this is controversial. You hear a lot of dads, and I know some of them personally, and some of them even in my family, who are so obsessed with being at every kid's game. Mm-hmm. Like, I will, and I get it. Like, there's a lot of honor in that. But I will move mountains to get to my kids' games. Mm-hmm. Good. That's great. When I sit in the stands and I watch some of these parents or some of these dads, and I try not to be judgmental, but I watch their kids watch them. Almost as if, gosh, I wish you'd go and do something. Mm-hmm. And it makes me look at what's going on after the game or before the game. And what am I doing before the game and after the game for this kid? And I'm not at every game. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's a part of me that I'm like, really wanted to get to that game. But my main focus has always been the same.
Yeah.
I want the freedom to take my son all summer long and put him on the biggest stages that I can.
Yeah.
Now, being at every single game throughout the entire year, that's like, I haven't made that kind of money yet.
Yeah.
But the money that I am making and the money that Jesse, that we're both making together, it allows us the freedom to almost take the entire summer off.
Yeah.
I think our family was together a combined 2 weeks from the end of May to the 1st of September. Mm-hmm. And that part is tough on the family.
Yeah.
But we're putting our kids on as big of a stage as we possibly can. National recognition.
Yeah.
He's playing on one of the top rated teams. And when the scouting deadline hit this year, he was a little hesitant that he was gonna see phone calls. But he had one of the biggest paradigm shifts, I think, in his entire life, or at least this career that he's wanting to make money in. Probably more personal than it was career or anything else. This year was the first year that we pulled him off of this travel ball team. It's probably the most popular one in the state of Utah. Some of the best teams they have in the state of Utah. And I didn't feel like he was gaining the traction that he needed to really move into this scouting deadline, which was it September 1st? Yeah, September 1st. And you'd see some of the other boys, they'd get some traction with some of these colleges. But there wasn't a lot of attention there, and there wasn't a lot of development. And I could see that he was just kind of waiting, right? Like there wasn't this, momentum that he was building and moving forward with.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to some guys that I knew, and I started asking around about this other team, and then I got in touch with the coach, and the coach is like, yeah, send me some of these and stuff. I'd like to see some of his stuff, and send it over. And he goes, yeah, you know what? I think I have a spot for him on our national team. They have an American team and a national team. The American team is about as good as the team that he was on, but the national team, they're ranked. And he says, I'm pitching only. And he loves to swing the bat, and he loves to play the field. And so I told him this. I said, hey, this is Team Trotsky, and you have a chance to play on this team, and this could be a really big deal, but you're only going to pitch. They'll let you play on the American team two-way. You can do whatever you want, but on the national team, they just want you as a pitcher. And this is the stage in a baseball or softball player's career where they start to see, okay, look, this is my strength.
Yeah.
My strength is my bat. My strength is my glove, or my strength is my arm.
Yeah.
And they kind of are torn inside. I'm going to have to go with my strength and leave these things that I also love behind.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what, Dad, I want to do it. Like I need to get on those stages. And I was like, okay, cool. So I talked to Jesse about it, and I said, Jess, like, I'm a little bummed that he's not going to be able to two-way, but I think something's going to change in his mind. I really hope that when he gets on this team, he's going to be able to identify differently. He's going to be able to see himself differently. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, we go out to the first tournament this year. It was the first week of June. And we're coming home from the game, going back. It was, we were in Southern California, and we're going back to the hotel. And it was just he and I. We went out on this one. And I said, so how was it? And he's like, great. Every single player is a D1 commit.
Wow.
And these aren't just small D1s. These are Tennessee, ASU, USC.
We don't talk about ASU.
Yeah, just you name it. Florida State. We don't
talk about ASU. It's U of A, not ASU.
Yeah, U of A, right? and that's where his coach coached was
really?
U of A. He was the hitting coach there.
Oh wow.
So we're going back, and he says that, and I said, yeah, they're it's a great team, and he goes, yeah, they're not much better than me. I was like, okay, here's
Bingo.
Where it goes. It's starting.
Bingo, yeah.
Right? And I said, yeah? What makes you think that? And he goes, well, Dad, I like playing with these guys. I can do that. And I was like, okay, let's see you do it. Then, okay, go. Like, don't prove it to me. Like, just go do it.
Put your money where your mouth is, yeah.
And the stage presented itself, right? He took the stage. He played really well, and he developed this confidence. And then they had a couple players that couldn't make the next two tournaments. So he got a hit. His bat was on fire. And now they're going to take him as a two-way. They start playing him. And we start approaching the scouting deadline. And he says, you could tell he's getting nervous, right? Like imposter in his head. He's just start talking to himself, and you can hear, I don't know. I'm like, E, let that story go. Mm-hmm. You're good. Let it go. Let's go focus on what's going to happen that day.
Yeah.
You're going to get phone calls. So the day rolls around, and he's like, Dad, I'm not getting any calls. I'm going to go golfing. Like he is really good at managing his stress.
Yeah.
Like, he loves fishing, and he'll go out on a whim by himself and just go fishing, or he'll go golfing by himself. Zom from our group put that bug in his ear one day and said, hey, you want to really like get to know people and discover yourself? Go golf. Just join a foursome.
Join a random foursome. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so he started doing that. I'm like, this kid is not a social butterfly. So it's really strange to see him do that. But he's golfing. I call him up. He doesn't answer. I call him again. He answers. And I'm like, this is not the day to not pick up your phone. Okay. Yeah. Even if you're in your backswing, if this thing rings, you need to pick up the phone. He's like, oh, all right. 30 minutes later, he calls me back. Dad, UVU just offered me full ride.
Wow.
The best baseball program in the state.
Yeah.
Right. Then he calls me back and he goes, Dad, Kansas State called me. Oregon called me. Utah Tech called me. There was La Jolla Marymount University in Los Angeles called him. He's getting all these offers, right? And a couple of them wanted him to come and do campus visits before they offered. And those have kind of fallen off. Mm-hmm. But I'm laying in bed that night and I'm sitting there with Jesse and we're talking, and he comes in and he's just out of breath, right? Comes stomping through the room and he's just like, you guys, I just realized something. And we were like, well, what's that, bud? I just realized that I'm D1.
Yeah.
And I kicked Jesse under the covers, right? And he goes, and I go, yeah, bud, you're that good. And he goes, I just never thought that I would be a D1 kind of guy.
Wow.
And I go, yeah? Well, so then what does that make you think about all your other beliefs? And he goes, he just stood there for a minute, like soaking this thought in.
Yeah.
And he goes, that I can do anything that I want. And I go, okay, good.
Go do it.
Go do it. And things have been really transforming for him ever since then. Like, to be able to see that these guys you put on the top shelf were just guys that are no different than you. Mm-hmm. And how that applies to almost everything in our lives.
Oh, it's so true.
These false expectations we set of ourselves because we think something else is happening for somebody else.
Yeah.
It's like they were just the right place, the right time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to take anything away from these boys or anybody else who's achieving greatness, right? They're working towards it. They're putting themselves in these places. They're putting in the work. Now you are too. You're putting in the work. You're putting yourself out there and in these places. Guess what's going to happen? The universe is going to repeat.
Yeah,
it's going to do the same thing. It's going to show up for you the same way it shows up for them.
Yeah.
It's courage for courage, bud.
So how does Ethan really, because it's kind of his breakthrough, his mental breakthrough, how can Ethan pass that message on to your other kids? How can Ethan show your other kids of, hey, listen, I had these limiting beliefs. I didn't think I was D1. I didn't think I could swing it or hit it or throw it as good as these other cats. But guess what? I could.
What a great question, man.
So how do you have Ethan
I gotta adjust for that question.
Move that down the line to your other kids?
So,
because if it comes from you, it's expected, right? If it comes from you and Jess, it's expected. That's what mom and dad are meant to tell me. But could you imagine you as a kid having one of your older siblings come down and say, hey, I just had this huge breakthrough. I can't share this. I need to share this with you. What would that have done to you as a sibling? So how can we have Ethan pass that message on?
Even though I had older sisters, they were rock stars, right? Like, there's just something about your older siblings. And I don't know, maybe some people are disgruntled with them, but I loved my sisters. I still do.
Yeah.
But they were giants. Like, they were big in school. They were straight A students, except my sister was just older than me. My older twins.
The other two.
But they were so full of confidence. Mm-hmm. At least it seemed to me as a kid. And so I imagine that my daughters see their older brother the same way.
Oh, superhero.
Just look up to him.
Yeah. They're idol. They're mentor. Yeah.
Universities are calling him up for baseball. Oh, I knew it.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're seeing this and they're like, yeah, we see our brother that way. I think to answer your question in a nutshell, it's vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you get a 16-year-old boy
To be vulnerable?
to be vulnerable, right? Like the 16-year-old boys right now, they're like trying to show this hard, tough skin. Like I'm this tough guy. At least that's what my son's doing. I'm watching a lot of his friends are trying to be macho, right? For the girls. And yeah, I'm tough, but inside it's like, are you tough?
Yeah.
We were in Florida this year and it was just me and the kids. I took just the kids. Jesse was on a business retreat and I took the kids to Florida for a huge baseball tournament. And I'm like, you know what? These girls have traveled with this kid for baseball most of their lives. I'm going to make something fun of it this year. We got a VRBO on the beach, right on the water, right? And just going to chop it up with these little girls while Ethan is at baseball.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've seen enough baseball. We're not going to go to all the games. Yeah. What do you guys want to do? You want to hang out on the beach?
We know what this looks
I'll
like.
go drop him off.
Yeah.
And so we love doing the VRBOs. We go and travel as a family. We try not to do the hotels.
Yeah.
We love doing the VRBOs because, for softball and baseball and anything else, we like to cook.
Yeah, yeah.
You feel a lot better when you go into the game.
You want space.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to relax and do their own thing in their own area, bedrooms, living room, dining,
That's
patio,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we go to Costco or we'll go to the grocery store and load up the day we get there and take it to the house and stock the fridge and we'll do our cooking. And so that night I made a big bowl of spaghetti and a salad and some breadsticks. And we go out on the back patio. It's got that big bug screen over this swimming pool. You can hear the water in the background. And the kids are just in this, like, this is such a great moment.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to take advantage of this one 100%. Like, all right, kids, we start eating. I got a question for you guys. Been thinking about this a lot. And not that I really need to know it for you guys, but I'm going to share something that I've been thinking a lot about. And I can tell, some of them are like starting to roll their eyes or whatever, right? And I go, what is your biggest fear? Like, what is the thing right now in your life that you are the most afraid of? I'll start. And I go in, trying to just kickstart this conversation, getting really vulnerable, and letting them know that although this is a fear, I'm managing it. I'm working through it. And a fear does not dissolve. A fear does not disappear. You just suddenly start to understand something about life, and you're no longer afraid of it. It's more knowledge, right?
Yep.
Knowledge is the opposite of fear. And so when we move over to Nightly, and Nightly's like, hurricanes. We're in Florida, right? Hurricanes. I watched this hurricane on TikTok, Dad, and it just tore this house just like this one apart. Good job, man. Good job. We go to her sister. Her sister starts talking about death, right? And I'm like, interesting. Like, what is it about death? And she starts going into like some detail. So we get over to her brother, and I'm thinking he's probably going to give this, tough kind of, I don't know. I just opened this door up.
Yeah,
All I can do is let them go
through
it the way they want to go through it. And he says, I don't know. For a minute, he sits there and he goes, my greatest fear is failure.
Pretty powerful from a
And
kid.
everyone stopped.
Yeah.
And I just looked over at his two sisters, and they were just jaws dropped, staring right at him, holding their forks.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang.
They're watching.
dang, E, that was so good. And I go, failure. Like, what kind of failure? And he goes, messing up, not being enough, not doing it just right. And he starts this short list. But as a father, I'm like, ooh, how did I contribute there?
Mm-hmm.
How did I contribute there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now I can start to see all the things that my dad did that I kind of internalized, right? Your inherited beliefs that I'm now showing him in a way that, and since then, I've had some pretty cool talks with him about, you know, this imperfect part of life that we need to embrace.
Well, I think, I think what's super cool for us, right, because of what we're doing ourselves personally right now, we're both part of We Are the They. You and I have found ourselves in a group of men who are vulnerable at every opportunity we get, because we've now learned how to be vulnerable, what that looks like, what that emotionally does to us and what we're allowed to release. But we've also learned how to receive other people being vulnerable, how to listen with intent, how to be comfortable with people's vulnerability and not be like, oh, this is fucking awkward. We've learned how to be vulnerable and receive vulnerability. I think now that we've learned this as men and also women, and at the age we're at, it's our responsibility, it is our duty to teach our kids that same thing of what does vulnerability look like? I don't feel like I'm enough. I don't feel like I'm worthy, or I feel less than. Great. I want you to share that with me and know that I'm a safe space for you to do that and talk through it. And I'm listening to you about Ethan and kind of the machismo. Yeah, we've all been 16. We all want a big dick swing around school campus and, be cool as shit and break the rules a little bit and, be the cool kid, or certainly I did. But we also have the opportunity now and I love doing this with my girls. Anytime that Andrew and I have the opportunity to come to Utah with the kids, we will. Because having my daughters around people like you and Mark McCormack and Doc Howland and Michael McHenry and other guys in the group that have learned what vulnerability looks like, they're now being surrounded with adults where there isn't any toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. It's just beauty. And they get to overhear and listen and be part of conversations with adults being vulnerable. Yeah. And they're like, oh, my dad's opening up to another dude about how he feels. That's kind of an interesting concept. Yeah. But then when we're at home and the kids come up to me and say, hey, you okay? You don't seem okay. And I'm like, actually, kids, I'm actually having a really bad day. I had this deal that was meant to go through and it fell through because of X, Y, and Z. And it's kind of put me in a little bit of a funk. And the kids are like, okay, how can I help? Yeah. I'm like, there's actually nothing you can do, kids. I just need a hug. And they're like, okay. Do you need a cup of tea? Do you need a hug? Like, they're ready to be that receiver of vulnerability. And I think especially for you with Ethan as a boy, getting him around dudes like me, like McCormack, like Howland, like McHenry, like Broderick, getting him around those kind of guys and just, hey, you know what? We're going for a guys' night and you're coming along with me. And we're going out for dinner with 6 of my good dudes, and you're going to listen to the conversation. And I'm going to ask you at the end of the evening what you took away from the conversation. And just have him sit there, and you'll be surprised. He may come back at the end of the day and be like, Dad, all I heard, you guys weren't talking about money. You weren't talking about business. All I saw was love, friendship, and you helping each other. How do I get to do that? Yeah, I love that suggestion. And I think that I know that we heal in communities. 100%. Right? Yeah. And having the right community is so vital. We heal in families. People say that, but you know what? Sometimes families are just super toxic. Oh, 100%. And so having the right community is so important. It's so vital for growth. It's so vital for development. And it's so vital for getting through these ceilings, breaking through these ceilings. I think that when our children are looking at something, or even an adult, when they're looking at vulnerability, they're almost paralyzed by it. Yeah. Because they see it up to the vulnerable, the vulnerable moment. Yeah. But they don't look
beyond the vulnerable moment. They don't see all of the cascading, unfolding events that happen because of vulnerability.
Absolutely.
And
the growth and the breakthroughs.
When you can bring someone along to show them that, yeah, vulnerability is not this easy, hey, I'm going to sit down and we're going to be vulnerable and we're going to cry it out, or we're going to talk about feelings or emotions or whatever, and we're going to talk about mistakes or the things that are really tough for me right now. Now you're going to see how another man can support another man and go, hey man, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you need someone to help you solve this situation?
Or just listen.
Yeah.
And
for the most part,
I think too, as a kid, and not just for Ethan, for our daughters, my daughters, your daughters, other people's listeners' daughters and kids and sons, whatever, regardless what they do in life, but just play this through me, Jarom. He's 17 years old, right? Let's say he gets D1, he goes to college on a full ride scholarship. If he goes and does that without knowing what vulnerability is, he's having a bad day in the cage, he's not hitting properly, he's not throwing properly, he's going to go in and he's just going to beat himself down. I'm not freaking good enough, I shouldn't be here, and this was a mistake, and blah, 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 blah. Whereas if you learn to be vulnerable at a younger age and you have a bad day and you're at school, you can go to the coach and say, hey, coach, there's something wrong with me today. I don't know what it is. I just feel off. I just can't seem to get my cadence, my rhythm, or even more, hey, coach, I got some stuff going on. I'm struggling. I just don't feel good mentally, blah, 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 blah. Like, how can you get past me? Is there something I can do to get me, can I do less reps to just get me back in the game so I can swing harder and faster and better next time? Like, you need that. And the reason why I mention this is, and I jokingly mentioned it at the beginning of the episode about the David Beckham documentary came out. Not many Americans who follow soccer know of David Beckham or what his story was, but I want to share this with you because I think it's super important, and I would suggest you share this with Ethan too. In 1998 at the World Cup in France, David Beckham got sent off in the quarterfinal. He made a stupid mistake. He lashed out. He kicked a guy. He got red carded, sent off. England got knocked out of the tournament. It wasn't Beckham's fault. There's still another 10 guys on the field, right? They just didn't play well as a team. The whole nation of England hated David Beckham. The media hated him. They blamed him for England leaving the World Cup. Every fan in the UK hated the guy. They were hanging dummies with nooses on with Beckham shirts from lampposts in the country. He was getting bullets in the mail. He was getting death threats, all of this stuff. And this is back in 1998. Mental health isn't even a thing at this time, right? He goes through this for 18 months by himself, wondering, when's it going to end? When's the country going to stop hating me? He would go to matches and just be booed on and off the field. People throwing stuff at him. He was loathed by the entire country. He didn't have anyone to turn to. He didn't turn to anybody. He couldn't turn to the manager because that wasn't what you did. He couldn't really turn to his wife because she was going through it too. He couldn't turn to his teammates because they didn't know how to react. So he went through the darkest period of his entire life by himself. There was no vulnerability there. I think it's imperative, and that took a toll on him. And he opens up in the documentary, he said, it still affects me to this day. What I went through, the hatred that I received. I think it's important now for kids in any walk of life, whether they go into sports, whether they go into business, whatever they do, that they have to learn to be vulnerable to the right people. Because if they don't, you have that one bad day, you miss, you strike out in baseball and he doesn't, he plays the worst day of ever. He goes internally up here and he beats himself down. I think it's really important for any kid at a right age to start learning what vulnerability is and being able to discuss it with their parents, with their peers, and honestly with other adults, because you will have other male figures or other adult figures in your life, a coach, a boss, a spouse. You got to learn to communicate with other adults outside of your family nucleus.
Yeah, I think boys probably struggle with that more than anybody else.
Oh, I agree.
When you watch, forget the book, but it uses the it uses the example of children out at recess and how the two differences between boys communicating and girls communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, I can't remember that book. But anyways, the example is great. You don't need the book reference. The example is you take these boys that are out playing football and they're throwing the football around and they're playing this game out at recess. And one of the boys falls to the ground and he just starts crying, right? And the captain of that team looks down and he's like, "Hey, Johnny, what's the matter? What are you crying for?" Johnny's like, "You never throw the football at me. I never get the ball. Nobody likes me." And so they get in this huddle and they're like, "Hey, all right, we're going to get Johnny the ball, right? Let's get Johnny the ball. Get him the ball and throw him to him. It'll be fine." And next play, they throw him the ball and they more or less just kind of carry him down the field,
mm-hmm.
right? And then the example of these girls, and these girls are playing hopscotch, right? And they're playing hopscotch, and then one of the girls falls to the ground. She starts crying, and she's like, you don't like me anymore. I thought we were best friends. She's like, "Oh, we are best friends. What's the matter?" And she says, "Well, you're wearing the same bow as Carla today." And she's like, "Oh," and they sit cross-legged from each other. And they talk about how they're feeling right now,
mm-hmm.
right? So these girls are activating this, working this feeling out.
Yeah.
Instead of holding it in, pretending it's not there, covering it, disguising it. Johnny's not a great football player, but we're going to make him feel like he is, right? We're going to parade him around the school for a moment. And then he's going to have this cognitive dissonance for the rest of his life because he knows he's not a great football player, but someone made him feel good that day.
Yeah.
And boys go through that. And I'm not saying that that's bad. I'm just saying that's you can distinguish between the two. And girls are constantly communicating shoulder to shoulder. And boys are kind of like, "Yeah, you know what I'm talking about." Like the emotional intelligence of a young woman is far greater.
Oh.
So much more developed than it is for a boy. When I coach softball, I coach my daughter's softball team. They got it. They couldn't throw a ball as hard or hit the ball as hard. But man, when I would sit down with them and I would talk here, it was like we went from the worst team to start that year to winning the season.
Yeah.
And I remember the championship game. My daughter had decided she was going to play softball, right? This was the first year she's going to play softball. It kind of tore me up because she was in horseback riding. She was so good. And Jesse and I were about to buy a horse. Like we were going all out and it was going to be tens of thousands now. And she comes in, she says, "I don't want to ride horses anymore." Well, she had just gone to the state championship for barrel racing and pole racing.
Oh, no.
And she was really good on these horses. And they gave her this belt buckle that's like this big. It's so cool. It's just a state of Utah 4-H state championship belt buckle. Yeah. So I get the girls off to the sidelines and we're talking. And I said, "You guys, we're going to go and take the field. And this team won the championship last year. Everybody knows that. It's no secret. What would be the difference maker when we take the field?" And just let the girls go around. We had several minutes before the game's going to start or before we're doing warm-ups. The girls are going around. And one girl finally goes, "Confidence." And I said, "Yeah, confidence. What kind of confidence?" And I brought the belt buckle with me, right? And I'm like baiting them, but they get it. They totally get it. And and one of the girls like, "Just walk out on the field and we know it." And I was like, "Okay." Like, what's a girl in life that she's got swagger? And my daughter goes, "A cowgirl." And I was like,
Yeah.
and all the girls were like, yeah, cowgirl. Cowgirl. And girl says something else. And I was like, yeah, no, cowgirl.
Stick with cowgirl. I got the prop for that one. Let's stick with cowgirl.
So I open up this box and I'm about to show it to him. And I said, you guys, we're going to take this field, right? We're going to go out on warm-ups and this team's going to be looking at us because they're going to be sizing us up. And I want to let you girls know that you girls are as good or better than anybody on this field today. You don't need to size them up. What we're going to do instead is we're going to take that field with swagger, like a cowgirl walking out onto that field. It gives me chills when I talk about it because these girls are just like, yep. You talk to the boys team and they're like, swagger?
What?
This dude's Ethan, would you get your dad out of here? But these girls got it. And you could talk to them in a way that psychologically they were like, I get it. Yep, swagger. Let's do it. And I go, okay, this is a belt buckle. This is a cowgirl belt buckle. I need you guys to visualize yourself. Think of yourselves. This is it. This is your moment. What kind of cowgirl are you? And I handed it around. They all held it. They all touched it. And dude, they stood up. They go out onto the field. And I'm like, we're going to win this game. And we did.
Nice.
It was crazy. It was so cool. But the girls, they really do. They have this intellect that they've developed over time while boys are suppressing.
Yeah, 100%.
And just like you said, when the girls come in and they're like, Dad, what's the matter? You could say nothing, right? Like that's what my dad did. Nothing, just go on, go do your thing, right? But you didn't. You changed it. You said, you know what? I'm just kind of feeling sad right now.
Yeah.
And now what you're telling these kids is there's no reason for you to be ashamed.
That's exactly
of a feeling you're having.
Exactly it.
I don't need to hide it.
Yep.
It's there. And I want to be the strong guy all the time, but guess what? I'm human. I am going to experience these emotions. And if I'm teaching my son or my girls that whatever emotion I have coming up, I'm ashamed of it, they're going to do the same.
1,000%.
They're going to identify the same way.
And I've noticed, and I'm sure Andrew has noticed this too, but with me being more vulnerable, which I'm very open to being now with, the girls, with Andrew, with friends, I've noticed that they have become more open to their emotions. So I ask them, hey, you seem a little down. What's going on? They're like, nothing. I'm like, come on. And they're like, well, I didn't do so great at school today and I kind of got told off, or this happened and a friend said this. I'm like, okay, let's talk through that. It allows for more open comment. Like you said, if they can see their old man, 6'2", bald ex-rugby player, being a little vulnerable, as a 13-year-old, you got nothing stopping you, sweetheart. Like that's what we do as a family. We are vulnerable as a family.
Yeah.
And it just, I'm hoping, in fact, I don't even hope, I know it will stand them in better stead to have deeper connections with us as parents, with spouses down the road, with their own kids down the road, and with colleagues and friends and family. They'll be able to have more conversations and they'll be able to skip the 34 years of bullshit that I went through of not having feelings or emotion and having to, pay a lot of money and join a group to have group therapy for 2.5 years, right?
It's been great.
It's been great. You want me to cry in front of 50 dudes?
Let's do it.
Gotcha. So I'm hoping that's what it brings down the road, As we start to wrap up, it has been just over an hour. This has flown by, which I love. Conversation's good when you look at your watch and like, oh shit, it's been an hour. As we start to wrap up, obviously you've got kids who are doing fantastic things. You've got beautiful kids, D1 scholarship son who's going to be swinging a bat. So I'm excited to see him on TV at some point. I'm like, hey, I know that kid. I cried with that kid back in one day. I'm like, hey, newspapers, you want a story? I know this one story about Ethan when he cried to me. He's like, oh shit, I've never been vulnerable in my life now. Leave the listeners and viewers with Jarom Iacono's best piece of parenting advice.
I think that one of the toughest moments, maybe one of the scariest moments in a father's life, is when he realizes that he won't always be able to protect his children from the monsters.
Yeah.
You know, all the nighttime, bedtime stories, turning off the lights, kissing them on the forehead, being there when they're throwing up, checking underneath the bed, checking the closets, closing the doors, turning on the night lights. When you come to that moment and you realize that you're not going to always be there to protect them from the monsters, then what you engage in and what you turn to is your focus on helping these children reach their potential so that the monsters in life can no longer persuade them to do this or to do that. Like, that's just, they're going to be there in life. And I'm always your dad, and I will always be there to talk and work things out to an extent. And as you get older, we'll help you develop a way for you to feel like you can do that by yourself. And that's a challenge. That really is a challenge. I think that a lot of the breakthroughs are happenstance, but they're not accidental.
Yeah.
They just happen because they may not be sequential. They may not be planned. You just have to be there in the moment. You have to be present. Your children are going to do this one thing. And it's not going to be your thing. And they're going to love this one thing. And it's not going to be something you love. And then when you can sit there and you can listen to that, then you go, I hope that I can help my child develop, or my quest is to help my children develop who they are, not because of the way their dad loved them, or not because their dad loved baseball or softball. We just happened to like that sport together, and we used that sport to develop. And I don't want my children to go after things because they thought that's what dad likes.
Yeah.
I don't want my children to believe in the gospel of dad. I want them to find their own beliefs, because that's how they stand on two legs. That's how they're confident. It's because they found it themselves. They're not believing it because someone else told them to.
Yeah.
They don't have this cognitive dissonance because someone's been telling them all their life to believe this way. They developed that, and I helped create a space for them to develop their way. That's it.
Oh, I love that, dude. That is fantastic.
Yeah,
that is fantastic. Jarom, it has been an absolute pleasure. I think you are one of the best guys I know. I love it when we have the opportunity to get together. I don't think there's ever been a chance or a time where we're together where we're not either laughing then crying, or just having a blast. You're an absolute beautiful human being.
Yeah, I feel the same way, man.
Yeah.
Conversations with you are magic.
Oh, they
you
are.
and Andrea are.
Yeah. And we just connected at a pin drop, and we've been great buddies since. So I really appreciate you coming on. My friends, people listening and watching, listen out for Ethan Iacono, who will be there one day, winning a World Series, and I'm sure old man Iacono will be back there behind the dugout with his glove on and his large pointy finger, foam finger. He'll be crying. Yeah, that's okay. You can cry then. Don't worry. We'll have a tissue for you. But thank you for coming on, my friend. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Bear Den podcast. Please click subscribe and get the updates for our new episodes. And if you feel the need to reach out, you can reach me on Instagram @TheBritBear.